In the opulent, silent halls of Ashford Manor, Sophia Whitmore, a humble maid, lived a life unseen, her dreams hidden behind a polite, subservient smile. Little did she know, her voice, a melody born of sorrow and hope, was about to shatter the impenetrable silence of her employer, Dominic Ashford. He was a billionaire, a man of power and impenetrable secrets, whose world was about to collide with hers in a way neither could foresee. Her song, a raw emotional truth, would unknowingly begin to unravel the darkest secret he meticulously guarded. If you cherish romance stories that capture your heart and soul from beginning to end, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a single one of our captivating journeys. And we'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching us from today? Let us know in the comments below. Sophia Whitmore, at a mere 24 years old, moved through the gilded corridors of Ashford Manor like a shadow, efficient and almost invisible. Her petite frame, standing at just 162 cm, belied a quiet strength, an unyielding spirit forged in the fires of necessity. Her long, dark brown hair, usually tied back in a neat, practical bun, often escaped in soft curls around her delicate, heart-shaped face. Hazel eyes, usually downcast in polite deference, held a depth of emotion and an intelligence that few ever noticed, much less acknowledged. Her fair skin, often flushed from honest labor, bore the faint marks of a life lived without the luxuries that surrounded her. She was undeniably beautiful, a natural, unaffected grace that shone through her humble maid's uniform, a plain black dress with a crisp white apron. But beauty, she knew, was a luxury she couldn't afford to contemplate. Life had dealt Sophia a hand of relentless challenges. Orphaned young, she had become the sole provider for her ailing grandmother, whose medical bills formed a never-ending mountain she was constantly trying to climb. Her dreams, once as vibrant and limitless as the sky, had been carefully packed away, replaced by the stark realities of survival. Her greatest passion, her solace, her very essence, was music. Her voice, a rich mezzo-soprano capable of weaving tales of profound joy and aching sorrow, was a gift she rarely shared, save for the quiet solitude of her cramped, rented room in the staff quarters, or in the hushed moments when she believed no one was listening. She had arrived at Ashford Manor 6 months ago, desperate for work. The position of a live-in maid in the legendary billionaire's estate was demanding, isolating, and often dehumanizing, but it paid enough to keep her grandmother comfortable. The manor itself was a labyrinth of opulent rooms, each more magnificent than the last, filled with antique furniture, priceless artworks, and a silence so profound it often felt oppressive. It was a world entirely antithetical to her own, a constant glittering reminder of the vast chasm between her station and that of the man who owned it all. Dominic Ashford, at 35, was an enigma. He was rarely seen, a phantom presence in his own sprawling home. When he did appear, usually a fleeting glimpse in the grand foyer or a silent nod in passing, he was every inch the billionaire titan. Tall at 185 centimeters with broad shoulders and a powerful, athletic physique, he exuded an aura of untouchable authority. His short, impeccably styled dark hair, often tousled with a hint of silver at the temples, framed a face that was all sharp angles and chiseled planes, a striking jawline that spoke of unwavering resolve. His eyes, a piercing, almost obsidian black, were famously unreadable, devoid of warmth, analytical and intense. His tan skin, likely from exotic business trips, seemed to emphasize the starkness of his features. He moved with a controlled grace, his expensive dark suits a second skin, a uniform of power. To Sophia, he was merely Mr. Ashford, the silent, formidable employer. She knew his reputation, a brilliant, ruthless businessman, a recluse whose wealth was matched only by his mystery. Whispers among the staff painted him as cold, distant, entirely absorbed in his empire. She had learned to navigate his presence with practiced ease, to anticipate his unspoken needs, to remain unseen. She cleaned his sprawling office, meticulously arranging his papers, polishing the mahogany desk, yet never daring to touch the personal items that offered tantalizing glimpses into his guarded world. She was a ghost in his house, and he, a distant, unreachable star. Her humble room in the staff wing was her sanctuary, a small island of personal chaos in the manor's perfect order. It was here, after long, exhausting days of scrubbing, dusting, and polishing, that she would pick up her worn guitar, its familiar weight a comfort, and let her voice soar, a balm for her weary soul. She sang old folk songs, blues melodies, and her own compositions, songs of love, loss, and the quiet dignity of enduring. Her music was a whisper of defiance, a secret garden where her spirit remained untamed, untouched by the golden cages of her reality. She longed for a stage, for an audience, for the sheer joy of sharing her art, but the dream felt impossibly far away, a cruel echo in the vast, empty mansion. Dominic Ashford's life was a meticulously crafted fortress of wealth, power, and solitude. At 35, he had built a tech empire that spanned continents, his name synonymous with innovation, disruption, and an almost brutal efficiency. Ashford Manor, a sprawling estate of old-world grandeur meticulously updated with cutting-edge technology, was not just his home. It was his command center, his sanctuary, and often his prison. His days were a relentless blur of high-stakes meetings, international calls, and complex financial analyses. Emotion was a luxury he couldn't afford, a liability he had long ago excised from his professional and largely his personal life. His reputation preceded him, brilliant, ruthless, utterly detached. Women, drawn by his wealth and formidable presence, had tried to breach his defenses, but none had ever succeeded. He saw their agendas, their calculations, their desire for his name, his money, his influence. He was an institution to them, not a man. His dark, piercing eyes, often described as cold or impassive, missed nothing. They analyzed, dissected, and catalogued, but rarely connected. He lived in a world of facts, figures, and predictable outcomes, and the messy, chaotic realm of human emotion was one he meticulously avoided. To his staff, he was a distant, demanding figure. He expected perfection, silence, and unwavering discretion. He paid handsomely for it. He barely registered their faces, seeing them as interchangeable cogs in the well-oiled machine that ran his household. Sophia Whitmore was no exception. He knew her name, of course, from the staff roster. He noted her efficiency, the quiet competence with which she maintained his study, his private chambers. Her presence was as unobtrusive as the manor's automated systems. He appreciated her meticulousness, her ability to anticipate his needs without a word. She was, in his estimation, an exemplary employee, a silent ghost ensuring his world remained perfectly ordered. He hadn't ever truly looked at her, not beyond the uniform, not beyond her function. She was part of the background, a detail in the grand tapestry of his controlled existence. His solitude, while self-imposed, was also a heavy burden. The vast rooms of Ashford Manor, filled with priceless art and antique furniture, often echoed with an emptiness that even his immense success couldn't fill. He worked late into the nights, driven by an insatiable need to control, to achieve, to silence the faint, insistent whispers of a past he refused to acknowledge. He rarely slept soundly, his mind constantly racing, replaying scenarios, strategizing. Sometimes, in the dead of night, he would wander the silent halls, seeking a peace that always eluded him, a stillness that even his perfect manner couldn't provide. He would find himself in the sprawling library, surrounded by the wisdom of ages, or in the conservatory, where exotic plants thrived in a climate-controlled environment, a small, vibrant pocket of life in his otherwise sterile existence. It was during one such restless night, in search of that elusive peace, that his carefully constructed world was about to be profoundly, irrevocably shaken. It was past midnight. A brutal storm had descended upon the city, mirroring the turmoil in Dominic's mind. The rain lashed against the manor's reinforced windows, each drop a percussive beat against the oppressive silence. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a low guttural growl that resonated through the ancient foundations of the house. Dominic, his mind a whirlwind of complex financial data and a frustrating business deal, found sleep an impossible dream. He had retreated from his brightly lit office, seeking the deeper quiet of the unused East Wing, a part of the manor that served mainly as storage for antique musical instruments and dusty, forgotten furniture. He often found an odd sense of calm amidst the forgotten grandeur, a detachment from the relentless demands of his present. He walked past towering, draped statues, his footsteps muffled by thick Persian rugs, The air in this wing was cooler, slightly musty, carrying the faint scent of old wood and polished brass. He was nearing the grand, unused ballroom, a cavernous space reserved only for the most elaborate and rare of social functions when he heard it. A sound, soft and ethereal at first, weaving through the howling wind and the drumming rain. It was a melody, a human voice. It was impossible. The staff quarters were on the other side of the manor. No one ventured into the east wing at this hour, especially during a storm. Yet the sound persisted, growing clearer as he approached the ballroom doors. It was a woman's voice, rich and warm, laced with a profound aching beauty that stole his breath. It was a bluesy, soulful rendition of an old, obscure folk song he vaguely remembered from his childhood, a melody of yearning and resilience. He pushed the heavy, ornately carved double doors open just a crack, peering into the cavernous, dimly lit ballroom. A single antique floor lamp cast a soft, golden circle of light in the center of the vast space. And there, perched precariously on a dusty, velvet-draped stool, wiping down the polished surface of an antique grand piano, was Sophia Whitmore, the humble maid. Her hair was down, a riot of dark, damp curls framing her face, glistening faintly in the soft light. She was singing, her eyes closed, completely lost in the music, her hands moving instinctively as she polished as if the rhythm flowed through her entire being. Her voice filled the ballroom, transcending its dust and disuse, transforming it into a sacred space of raw, unadulterated emotion. It was powerful, vulnerable, utterly authentic, a stark contrast to the sterile, calculated world Dominic inhabited. He saw her, truly saw her, for the very first time. Not as a maid, not as a function, but as an artist, a creator, a vessel of profound beauty. He felt a jolt, a physical tremor that ran through his meticulously controlled body. His analytical mind, usually so quick to dissect and categorize, was utterly stunned, momentarily rendered speechless. The sheer, unexpected beauty of her voice, her presence, resonated with a part of him he thought long dead, stirring an unfamiliar ache in his chest. A profound astonishment mixed with an intense, unbidden curiosity seized him. Who was this woman? And what other secrets did she hold beneath her quiet exterior? He stood transfixed, a silent, unseen witness to a private, sacred performance that had inadvertently, irrevocably breached the walls of his solitude. The storm outside raged, but within him, a different, more profound tempest had just begun. Dominic retreated from the ballroom entrance, closing the doors softly behind him, his presence still undetected. He walked back to his study, but sleep was now even further from his grasp. Her voice, her raw, aching voice, echoed in his mind, a haunting melody that refused to be silenced. The image of her, so vibrant and alive amidst the dusty grandeur, was burned into his memory. The unassuming maid had become an enigma, a captivating anomaly that defied all his expectations. He found himself replaying the song, trying to decipher the emotions woven into its fabric, an exercise far more complex and intriguing than any business deal. The next morning, his meticulous routine felt subtly, irrevocably altered. He found himself scanning the staff, seeking her out, his gaze lingering on her whenever she moved through the manor. Sophia, oblivious to his observation, continued her duties with her usual quiet efficiency. He noticed the way the light caught the dark curls of her hair, the delicate curve of her neck as she dusted a console table, the innate grace in her movements. Details he had once dismissed as irrelevant now held an inexplicable fascination. He engineered their first direct interaction that day, a calculated move that felt uncharacteristically impulsive. He forgot a file in his study, knowing she would be cleaning it. When she arrived, polishing the expansive mahogany desk, he entered, feigning surprise. Sophia, startled, almost dropped her cloth. "Mr. Ashford," she said, her voice soft, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. "Miss Whitmore," he replied. His voice, usually so clipped and authoritative, softened almost imperceptibly. "Working late last night, I heard a melody." He paused, watching her reaction, a flicker of apprehension in her hazel eyes. Her cheeks flushed a deeper red. "I wasn't aware we had a resident musician." Sophia's heart hammered in her chest. Shame, mixed with a strange, fleeting sense of exposure, washed over her. Her secret, her solace, had been discovered. "I apologize, Mr. Ashford," she stammered, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I didn't realize anyone was in the East Wing. It won't happen again." "On the contrary," Dominic countered, his voice steady, a hint of something unreadable in its depths. "Your voice? It's quite remarkable. A talent such as that should not be confined to private moments or dusty ballrooms." He saw her surprise, a genuine flicker of disbelief in her eyes, before she quickly masked it. "You sing professionally?" She hesitated, then nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I used to. Before circumstances changed." She didn't elaborate, and he didn't press, sensing a fragile boundary. "I see," Dominic said, his gaze intense, analytical. He saw the resilience in her posture, the quiet dignity that refused to be broken. "Well, consider it a standing invitation. If you feel inclined to grace the manor with your music, you are welcome to do so. In fact, I insist. It adds a certain ambiance." He turned to retrieve his file, a subtle dismissal, but the unspoken message hung in the air. He was interested. He had noticed her, and Sophia, bewildered, felt a strange mix of relief and profound unease. Her world, once so clearly defined, had just taken an unexpected, potentially dangerous turn. The formidable billionaire, who barely acknowledged her existence, was now aware of her most cherished secret, and he wanted more. From that day forward, the dynamics within Ashford Manor subtly shifted. Dominic's standing invitation wasn't merely a polite suggestion. It was a quiet command, an almost imperceptible pressure. He found subtle ways to seek out Sophia, to be in her presence more often. He would coincidentally appear in the library while she was dusting, or in the conservatory where she occasionally arranged fresh flowers. His questions, initially about her voice, branched out to her life, her day, her thoughts, inquiries that felt profoundly intrusive yet oddly captivating. He rarely smiled, but his dark eyes, no longer completely unreadable, held a nascent curiosity when he looked at her, a focused intensity that made her skin tingle. Sophia, in turn, found herself increasingly unnerved yet undeniably drawn. She was acutely aware of his presence, the way his expensive cologne lingered in a room after he left, the quiet power that radiated from him. Her initial apprehension was slowly, dangerously mingling with a strange fascination. She was a maid, he was a billionaire. The unspoken rules of their world screamed against any form of personal connection. Yet his gaze, intense and unwavering, seemed to pierce through her uniform, through her polite facade, to the very core of her artistic soul. One afternoon, she found herself tidying his private study, a room usually off limits when he was working. He was at his vast mahogany desk, engrossed in a complex digital display, his brow furrowed in concentration. She moved silently, dusting the shelves of weighty financial tomes. He paused, rubbing the bridge of his nose, then glanced up, his eyes meeting hers. "Sophia," he said, her name a low rumble, the first time he had spoken it outside of a formal context, and it sent an unexpected shiver through her. "I have a difficult negotiation this week. High stakes. The silence. It can be stifling." He paused, his gaze assessing. "Would you, perhaps, consider singing a piece for me? Here, after hours?" Sophia froze, her heart hammering. The request was bold, personal, utterly inappropriate for an employer to ask of his maid. But there was a vulnerability in his tone, a hint of genuine need beneath his usual controlled demeanor that she couldn't ignore. The image of him, so powerful, yet alone in his empire, resonated with her own deep-seated loneliness. And the chance to sing, to share her music, even in this strange, formal context, tugged at her artist's soul. "Mr. Ashford," she began, her voice hesitant. "My duties." "Your duties are to ensure the smooth running of this household," he interrupted, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "And if my needing a moment of inspiration, if you will, falls within that purview, then so be it." He leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes fixed on her. "I understand if you're uncomfortable, but I assure you, it would be a private affair, and well compensated, of course." The mention of compensation stung, a reminder of her position, yet the money was desperately needed. Reluctantly, Sophia agreed. That evening, after the last of the staff had departed, she found herself back in his study, her guitar in hand. The room, usually sterile, felt strangely intimate under the soft glow of a single desk lamp. Dominic sat in a leather armchair, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, his gaze unwavering. She was terrified, exposed. But as her fingers found the familiar chords of a bluesy ballad about hidden dreams and unspoken desires, her voice, at first shaky, soon soared, filling the study with a raw, aching beauty. Dominic sat motionless, his expression unreadable, yet Ayla could feel the profound impact of her music on him. She saw a flicker in his dark eyes, a brief, unguarded emotion, perhaps a shadow of pain, or a ghost of longing. When the song ended, the silence that followed was profound, heavy with unspoken truths. "Remarkable," he finally said, his voice a low, rough murmur. "Truly remarkable, Sophia." He didn't offer the promised compensation then, a small detail she almost missed, swept away by the intensity of the moment. He merely sat, gazing at her, a deep, unsettling curiosity now burning in his eyes, a connection forged in melody that transcended their roles. She realized with a terrifying clarity that he wasn't just interested in her voice, he was interested in her, and that, she instinctively knew, was a very dangerous thing for a humble maid in a billionaire's mansion. The lines were blurring, the boundaries eroding, and she was stepping into uncharted, perilous territory. Their late-night sessions in the study became a strange, unspoken ritual. Twice a week after her duties were done, Sophia would bring her guitar to Dominic's study. She sang for him, pouring her soul into each note, sharing the stories and emotions woven into her music. He listened, silent and unmoving, his gaze fixed on her, his presence a powerful, almost magnetic force. In those moments, the vast chasm between them seemed to shrink, replaced by a fragile bridge of shared vulnerability. She was no longer just his maid, and he was no longer just her distant, formidable employer. Through her music, Dominic began to open up, albeit in fragments. He never spoke directly of his past, but his reactions to certain songs, a tightening of his jaw, a flicker of pain in his eyes, a subtle shift in his posture, revealed glimpses of a guarded, perhaps wounded soul. She sensed a profound loneliness in him, a solitude so deep it resonated with her own. He would sometimes ask about the meaning of a lyric, about the inspiration behind a melody, and in answering, Sophia found herself sharing pieces of her own life, her struggles, her dreams, with a man who seemed to genuinely listen, not with judgment, but with an intense analytical focus. One evening, after a particularly poignant ballad, Dominic walked to the window, staring out at the city lights, his back to her. "My life," he began, his voice low, almost a whisper, "has always been about control, about building, expanding, protecting. Every decision is calculated, every risk assessed. There's little room for spontaneity, for genuine connection." He paused, then turned, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Your music, Sophia, it's the opposite of control. It's raw, it's beautiful, it's chaos." There was no judgment in his voice, only a strange, unsettling fascination. He was a man of logic, captivated by her world of emotion. He started making subtle, almost imperceptible changes to her routine. He ensured her grandmother's medical bills were always paid promptly, a quiet, anonymous transaction he orchestrated through his estate manager, never mentioning it to Sophia directly. He subtly upgraded her staff quarters, replacing old furniture, ensuring better heating. Sophia noticed these improvements, felt the easing of her financial burden but couldn't trace them back to him. She suspected, but he remained silent, a benevolent, hidden hand. One night she found herself tidying his private living quarters, a task usually reserved for the head housekeeper. He had left his desk slightly disheveled, a rare occurrence. As she carefully organized a stack of papers, her eyes inadvertently fell upon an old, faded photograph tucked beneath a legal brief. It was a picture of a younger Dominic, perhaps in his late teens, standing with a radiant woman who bore a striking resemblance to him. She had a bright, joyful smile, her arm linked through his, both looking utterly carefree. Below the photo, a single elegant inscription, "My dearest twin, Elena, always with you." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Twin? Elena? Dominic had never spoken of family. He was an only child, everyone assumed. The man of control, the architect of an empire, had a twin sister, now seemingly absent from his life. A sudden, sharp pang of intuition, a chilling premonition struck her. This wasn't just a photograph. This was a glimpse into the heart of his carefully guarded solitude, a hint of a deeper unspoken pain. His darkest secret, the title of her own unsung composition, suddenly felt disturbingly real, woven into the very fabric of his being. She carefully replaced the photograph, her hands trembling slightly, her gaze lingering on the carefree smile of the young woman. A cold dread began to seep into her veins, mingling with the burgeoning warmth she felt for Dominic. She had found a crack in his armor, but she now feared what terrible truth lay within. The more she learned, the more dangerous her position felt, caught between her growing feelings and the chilling mystery of his past. Their connection was deepening, but so was the shadow of his secrets. The discovery of the photograph of Elena, his twin sister, was a seismic shift in Sophia's perception of Dominic Ashford. The stoic, impenetrable billionaire suddenly seemed less like a monument of power and more like a deeply wounded individual, meticulously guarding a profound personal loss. Her curiosity, once a cautious flicker, now burned with an almost desperate intensity. She found herself searching for subtle clues in his demeanor, in the layout of the manor, in the hushed whispers of the older staff members. But Dominic remained a fortress, his control absolute, his secrets carefully buried. Yet their late-night music sessions continued, growing richer, more intimate. Sophia found herself pouring even more of her soul into her songs, subtly weaving in themes of loss, resilience, and the power of unspoken grief, hoping to reach the man beneath the mask. Dominic, in turn, seemed to be listening with a new, almost painful intensity. His dark eyes, usually analytical, now held moments of profound melancholy, brief glimpses into the raw emotion he so fiercely suppressed. One evening, after she sang a particularly haunting melody about a love lost too soon, the silence in the study was electric, heavy with unspoken feeling. Dominic walked slowly towards her, his movements measured, his gaze unwavering. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet room. She felt exposed, vulnerable, yet a strange, powerful pull kept her rooted to her spot. He stopped just inches from her, his imposing height casting a shadow over her small frame. The air crackled with a palpable tension, a sensual current that had been simmering beneath the surface of their interactions, now threatening to erupt. His hand, large and strong, slowly reached out, not to touch her, but to gently brush a stray strand of dark hair from her cheek, his fingers grazing her skin with an unexpected feather-light tenderness. The contact sent a jolt of pure electricity through her, a warmth that spread rapidly through her veins, making her breath catch in her throat. Her hazel eyes, wide and luminous, met his dark, intense gaze. His usual analytical coolness was gone, replaced by a raw, burning intensity, a hunger she had never seen before. He looked at her as if she held the answer to a question he had been asking his soul for years, a question he hadn't even known how to articulate. "Sophia," he breathed, her name a low, rough murmur, thick with unspoken yearning. It was not a command, not an inquiry, but an admission, a prayer, an almost painful confession of a feeling he had meticulously denied. The sound of her name spoken with such raw emotion was a revelation, shattering the last vestiges of their formal distance. Her rational mind screamed against it. He was her employer, a billionaire, out of reach. But her heart, foolish and defiant, surged with an answering emotion she could no longer deny. She felt a profound connection, an elemental pull that transcended their disparate worlds, their roles, their carefully constructed defenses. In that moment, under the weight of his gaze, in the quiet intimacy of his study, the fragile bridge between them transformed into an undeniable, dangerous, exhilarating bond. The deepest secrets, she knew, were often found not in words, but in the silent, yearning gaze of two souls colliding. The following days were a whirlwind of heightened senses for Sophia. Every interaction with Dominic was charged with the lingering memory of his touch, the intensity of his gaze, the unspoken confession in his voice when he spoke her name. The lines between employer and employee had blurred, then vanished, replaced by an electric awareness that hummed constantly between them. She found herself anticipating his presence, her heart doing a nervous flutter whenever his footsteps echoed in the distant halls. He, in turn, seemed to seek her out with a newfound, almost reckless abandon, lingering in rooms where she worked, engaging her in conversations that strayed far from household duties, his dark eyes never leaving her face. He asked her about her dreams, about her aspirations beyond Ashford Manor. He spoke of the vast opportunities available in the city for talented musicians, subtly hinting at resources, at connections he could make. Sophia, though flattered and intrigued, felt a growing sense of unease. His generosity, his sudden, profound interest, felt too overwhelming, too good to be true. It was a golden cage, she feared, exquisitely crafted, but a cage nonetheless. She was acutely aware of the secret she had stumbled upon. Elena, his twin sister. The knowledge lay heavy in her, a silent burden that colored every interaction, every shared glance. She longed to ask him to break the silence, to understand the truth behind his profound loneliness, but fear held her back. The unspoken secret felt like a precipice, and she was terrified of what she would find if she pushed him to reveal it. Dominic, meanwhile, was utterly consumed. Sophia had become an obsession, a vibrant anomaly in his meticulously ordered world. Her voice was a balm to his restless soul, her presence a chaotic, beautiful disruption to his sterile existence. He found himself thinking of her constantly, of her delicate features, her expressive eyes, the way her hair framed her face when she sang. He was a man accustomed to having everything under his control, but Sophia, with her untamed spirit and her hidden depths, defied all his attempts at categorization. He recognized the danger of his growing feelings, the inappropriateness of his attraction to his maid, but he found himself utterly unable to resist the pull. She was a melody he couldn't stop hearing, a mystery he was desperate to solve. One afternoon, as Sophia was cleaning his study, Dominic entered, a rare, troubled expression on his face. He held a framed photograph, a picture of Elena, his twin sister, looking radiant and full of life, her smile almost identical to his own, but filled with a warmth his now lacked. He sat heavily at his desk, staring at the photo, completely lost in thought, his formidable composure momentarily shattered. Sophia paused her work, her heart aching for him, for the profound sorrow that emanated from him. She knew this was her chance. She could ask. She could finally confront the truth. But before she could utter a word, he looked up, his dark eyes filled with a pain that startled her. "Elena," he whispered, his voice hoarse, raw with an emotion she had never heard from him before. "My twin sister." He paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath. "She's gone, Sophia. She's been gone for years." His gaze met hers, and in their depths, she saw not just grief, but a profound, almost crushing guilt, a darkness that seemed to swallow the light. "It was my fault. All my fault." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken anguish, a devastating confession. Sophia felt a cold dread envelop her. The darkest secret wasn't just about a lost sister. It was entwined with a tragedy, a burden of guilt that had shaped the formidable man before her. She was now standing on the brink of his deepest pain, on a path that promised to unravel not just his past, but irrevocably change their precarious present. Her heart, already so dangerously invested, braced itself for the storm that was surely coming. The intimacy forged in music was now confronting a truth too painful, too overwhelming, too dark for either of them to ignore. The words hung heavy in the air, a devastating confession that shattered the careful silence of Dominic's study. "Elena," he had whispered, his voice raw, hoarse with a pain so profound it seemed to reverberate through the very foundations of Ashford Manor. "My twin sister. She's gone, Sophia. She's been gone for years." His dark eyes, usually so guarded, were now wide, filled with an anguish that made his formidable composure crumble before her. "It was my fault. All my fault." Sophia stood frozen, her own breath caught in her throat. The photograph of the radiant young woman lay forgotten on the desk, a silent testament to a life brutally cut short. Her heart, already dangerously invested in this complex man, ached with an overwhelming wave of empathy. The darkest secret wasn't just about a lost sister. It was entwined with a tragedy, a crushing burden of guilt that had molded the formidable, reclusive man before her. She was now standing on the precipice of his deepest pain, on a path that promised to unravel not just his past, but irrevocably change their precarious present. Dominic ran a hand through his dark hair, the distinguished silver at his temples catching the soft lamplight. He looked utterly broken, stripped of the layers of control he wore like a second skin. "We were inseparable," he began, his voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to his usual authoritative tone. "Always together. She was everything. The light, the laughter, the only one who truly understood me, who saw beyond the expectations, the name, the fortune." His gaze drifted to a point beyond Sophia, lost in the shadows of a painful memory. Our parents had high expectations, especially for me, the heir. Elena, she was free-spirited, a painter. She saw the world in vibrant colors, while I saw it in numbers and strategies. He paused, a shudder racking his powerful frame. Sophia remained silent, offering only her presence, a quiet anchor in his storm of grief. I was 20. She was 20. I was focused on the family business, already burdened by responsibility. Our father was pushing me hard. Elena felt suffocated by the world we lived in, by the constant scrutiny, the societal pressures. She wanted to escape, to find her own path, to paint freely, unburdened by the Ashford name. He clenched his fists, knuckles white against his tan skin. She found a small art community abroad. She begged me to go with her, to take a gap year, to just live for a while. She said I was losing myself in the ambition, becoming someone cold and rigid. I refused. He continued, his voice heavy with self-loathing. I told her it was foolish, irresponsible, that I had duties, expectations. I dismissed her dreams, her need for freedom. I told her she was being naive. I was so arrogant, so blind. A single agonizing tear traced a path down his chiseled cheek, a stark testament to the depth of his buried pain. Sophia watched, her heart clenching. She had never seen him so utterly undone, so vulnerable. "She went anyway," Dominic whispered, his voice cracking. Alone, rebellious, as she always was. I was furious. We argued. The last words we exchanged were harsh, unforgivable. I told her if she left, she shouldn't bother coming back. She said she wouldn't. He covered his face with his hands, his broad shoulders shaking with silent sobs. A few months later, a small plane crash. In a remote area. No survivors. She was on that plane, Sophia. She was coming home to make amends, to try and find common ground, and I never got to apologize. I never got to tell her how much I loved her, how wrong I was, how much I missed her light. The silence that followed was profound, filled only with the faint sound of Dominic's ragged breathing and the distant hum of the manor. Sophia's heart bled for him. She saw not the ruthless billionaire, but a devastated young man haunted by the ghost of his beloved sister, crushed by a guilt he had carried for 15 years. His impenetrable facade, his cold detachment, his reclusive nature, it all coalesced into a heartbreaking defense mechanism against a world that had taken his everything. His entire empire, she realized, was perhaps built on the bedrock of that pain, a desperate attempt to control what he could, after losing control over the most important thing in his life. Slowly, carefully, Sophia walked towards him. Every instinct screamed at her to maintain distance, to protect her fragile heart, but her empathy, her profound understanding of loss, overrode all caution. She reached out, her small, trembling hand gently coming to rest on his powerful shoulder. The contact was tentative yet firm. Dominic flinched. A slight tremor, then slowly lowered his hands, his dark eyes, red-rimmed and raw, meeting hers. Sophia didn't offer empty words of comfort. No hollow, "I'm sorry for your loss." She knew intimately the futility of such platitudes in the face of such profound grief. Instead, she offered the only thing she truly possessed, the only thing that had ever healed her own wounds, her music. She moved to the grand piano, the instrument a silent, powerful presence in the study. She sat down, her fingers still trembling slightly, finding the keys. She began to play a soft, melancholic melody she had composed years ago, a wordless elegy born from her own experiences of loss and the quiet strength of enduring. The notes filled the room, a gentle, healing balm, weaving around Dominic's raw anguish. She played with an exquisite tenderness, each chord a brushstroke of understanding, each progression a silent promise of solace. She poured all her empathy, her compassion, her own understanding of profound, soul-deep sorrow into the music. It was a lament, but also a hymn of hope, a reminder that even in the deepest darkness, beauty and connection could still exist. Dominic, initially rigid in his despair, slowly relaxed. He watched her, his gaze fixed on her delicate hands dancing over the keys, on her face, etched with such pure emotion. He listened, truly listened to the music, allowing it to penetrate the hardened layers of his grief. The melody spoke to him in a way words never could, bypassing his analytical mind and speaking directly to his wounded soul. He felt the cold, hard knot in his chest begin to loosen, a fragile, almost imperceptible softening. It was a shared language, a bridge built not of logic but of pure, unadulterated feeling. When the last note faded, leaving a resonant echo in the profound silence, Dominic slowly rose from his desk chair. He walked towards the piano, his steps measured, no longer burdened by the immense weight he had carried moments before. He stopped beside her, his dark eyes, though still shadowed with pain, now held a new light, a glimmer of gratitude, of wonder, of a profound connection. "That was beautiful, Sophia," he said, his voice still hoarse but calmer, a deep tremor in its depths. "It was peace." Sophia looked up at him, her hazel eyes meeting his. In that moment, she saw beyond the billionaire, beyond the ruthless CEO, beyond the grieving brother. She saw a man, raw and vulnerable, finding a fragile moment of solace in her music, and she realized, with a startling clarity, that her art, her voice, had the power to heal, not just herself, but perhaps even him. The air between them hummed with a different kind of electricity now, one of shared vulnerability, of profound understanding, of a burgeoning intimacy that transcended their roles. From that night forward, their relationship deepened irrevocably. The unspoken boundaries between employer and maid, though still formally acknowledged in the daylight hours, completely dissolved in the quiet intimacy of their stolen evenings. Their late-night sessions in the study evolved. It wasn't just about music anymore. After Sophia would sing, they would talk. Dominic would ask about her life, her grandmother, her dreams, listening with an intensity that made her feel truly seen, truly heard, for the first time in years. Sophia, in turn, found herself sharing more than just snippets of her past. She shared her hopes, her fears, her resilient spirit. He revealed more about Elena, sharing anecdotes, memories of their childhood, glimpses of the vibrant, free-spirited sister who had been his anchor. As he spoke, a warmth, a rare glimpse of humor, would sometimes surface in his dark eyes, transforming his severe features. Sophia, listening, pieced together the puzzle of the lonely, controlled man before her, understanding the immense burden he carried, the profound impact of his loss. Their conversations became a fragile bridge of trust, built on shared grief and the unexpected solace her music provided. The physical tension between them, once an unspoken undercurrent, became almost unbearable. His gaze, no longer merely analytical, held a simmering intensity, a profound yearning that mirrored her own. Her body, once wary, now instinctively leaned towards him, drawn by an irresistible, magnetic pull. Small, accidental touches became deliberate, lingering. His hand might brush hers as he handed her a music sheet. Her fingers might graze his arm as she reached for her guitar. Each contact sent a jolt of electricity through them, a silent acknowledgement of the growing, undeniable attraction. One evening, after Sophia had finished singing a haunting love song, Dominic didn't speak. He simply rose from his armchair, his dark eyes fixed on her, an unreadable storm brewing in their depths. He walked towards her, his steps slow, deliberate, each one pulling him closer, dissolving the last vestiges of their formal distance. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic rhythm that echoed the profound anticipation that filled the room. She felt exposed, vulnerable yet utterly unable to move, rooted to her spot by an irresistible force. He stopped directly in front of her, his imposing height casting a shadow over her small frame. The air crackled with a palpable tension, thick with unspoken desires and raw, simmering emotion. Her hazel eyes, wide and luminous, met his dark, intense gaze. His usual analytical coolness was utterly gone, replaced by a burning hunger, a profound yearning that seemed to strip away all his carefully constructed defenses. He looked at her as if she were the answer to every unasked question, the missing piece to his fragmented soul. "Sophia," he breathed, her name a low, rough murmur, thick with unspoken yearning, with all the emotions he had meticulously suppressed for years. It was a plea, a confession, a prayer. The sound of her name, spoken with such raw, unadulterated emotion, was a revelation, shattering the last vestiges of their formal distance, their carefully maintained roles. Her rational mind screamed against it. He was her employer, a billionaire, a man burdened by a dark past. But her heart, foolish and defiant, surged with an answering emotion she could no longer deny, a profound, elemental connection that transcended their disparate worlds. Slowly, almost reverently, he raised his hand. His fingers, large and strong, hesitated for a fraction of a second, as if seeking permission before gently coming to rest on her cheek, his thumb stroking her skin with an impossibly tender touch. The contact sent a jolt of pure electricity through her, a warmth that spread rapidly through her veins, making her breath catch in her throat, stealing her words, her resolve. Her entire body trembled, a silent testament to the raw power of his touch, his presence. Every rational thought in Sophia's head evaporated, replaced by a singular, overwhelming need, a primal yearning for connection that transcended all logic, all fear, all societal boundaries. And then slowly, deliberately he lowered his head, his dark eyes still locked on hers, a silent question in their depths. Her own eyes fluttered shut in answer, a silent surrender. His lips met hers. It wasn't a gentle, tentative kiss, a cautious exploration of burgeoning feelings. It was a release, a surrender to the weeks of pent-up tension, unspoken attraction, and undeniable connection. It was a desperate, hungry kiss, filled with all the things they hadn't been able to say, all the fears they had harbored, all the hopes they had secretly nurtured. His other hand came up to cup the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her dark curly hair as he pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, staking his claim, a silent assertion of possession that left her breathless. Sophia melted against him, her small hands coming up to grip his broad shoulders, her fingers digging into the expensive fabric of his shirt as she returned the kiss with equal, unrestrained fervor, pouring all her longing, her gratitude, her blossoming love, and her desperate need into her response. It was a kiss of collision, of two worlds, two lonely souls finally crashing into one another, irrevocably altered by the impact. It was the music and the silence, the wealth and the humility, the hidden pain and the soaring hope, all culminating in this single explosive moment of contact. His lips were firm and demanding, yet they were also searching, asking a question she was more than ready to answer, a profound inquiry into the depths of her soul. She let him taste the truth of her song on her lips, the raw, unfiltered emotion she had poured into her melodies, the undeniable reality of her heart. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, they simply stared at each other, the air crackling between them, thick with the aftermath of their profound connection. The dam had broken. The world seemed to tilt and then resettle on a new axis, forever changed by the power of that kiss. The aftermath of the kiss left them both breathless, standing in the soft, intimate glow of the study lamp, the air between them thick and electric. Sophia's lips tingled, her entire body humming with a strange new energy, a profound sense of having been touched, seen, and utterly claimed. Dominic's dark eyes, usually so guarded, so meticulously controlled, were wide with a raw, undisguised vulnerability that mirrored her own, a profound shock in their depths. The formidable fortress of control he had so carefully built around himself had been breached, and he seemed just as stunned by it as she was, perhaps even more so. "Sophia," he started, his voice rougher than usual, a deep tremor in its depths, then stopped, as if the words he was used to, logical, precise, impersonal, were utterly failing him. He, a man who could command a boardroom with a single, succinct sentence, was rendered utterly speechless by a kiss, by the overwhelming tide of emotion that had just consumed them both. Sophia saw his struggle, the internal war raging within him between his ingrained discipline and the overwhelming tide of feeling he was clearly experiencing. This powerful, enigmatic man, the titan of industry, was just as lost in this uncharted territory as she was, navigating a landscape of emotion he had meticulously avoided his entire life. Instead of speaking, he reached for her again, more gently this time, his movements hesitant, almost reverent. His hands framed her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones with a tenderness that made her heart ache with a fierce, intoxicating sweetness. "I have no right," he whispered, more to himself than to her, his voice thick with a sudden, profound guilt. "Your life, it's already so complicated, and I'm your employer." The words, though true in a practical sense, were a stark, jarring contrast to the fire she had just felt in his kiss. A sudden, unwelcome intrusion of logic and responsibility, of guilt and consequence, into a moment of pure, unadulterated feeling. It was the CEO, the man of systems and structures, attempting to rationalize a moment that defied all reason. "Don't," Sophia interrupted, her voice surprisingly firm, cutting through his self-recrimination. She placed her hands over his, pressing his palms more firmly against her skin, her touch an unspoken command. "Don't analyze this, Dominic. Not now." For the first time, she was the one taking control, guiding the emotional tenor of the moment, refusing to let him retreat into the safety of logic. She looked directly into his eyes, willing him to see past the circumstances of their meeting, past the vast disparity in their wealth and status, past the uncomfortable reality of her dependency. "What just happened between us? It had nothing to do with duty or obligation, and you know it." Her directness, her unwavering gaze, seemed to break through his hesitation, piercing the veil of his self-doubt. A look of profound relief, almost like a physical weight being lifted from his shoulders, washed over his face, as if she had given him permission to feel what he was feeling, to surrender to the raw, undeniable truth of their connection. "I know," he admitted, his voice low and intense, a raw, honest confession. He confessed that from the moment he heard her sing in the ballroom, something inside him had shifted, irrevocably changed. He had spent his life surrounded by people who wanted something from him. His money, his influence, his name, his power. They saw the title, not the man. But she, with her fierce pride, her untamed spirit, and her soulful music, had wanted nothing but to be seen for who she was. The artist, the woman. And in seeing her, in truly seeing the messy, beautiful, chaotic truth of her soul, he had begun to feel seen himself, perhaps for the very first time in his life. It was a confession that mirrored her own feelings so perfectly, so profoundly, that it left her breathless, tears stinging her eyes. He wasn't just a benefactor, a benevolent billionaire. He was a man with his own deep-seated loneliness, his own carefully constructed walls, his own profound need for connection. He was a man who had been just as lost as she was, albeit in a different kind of storm, a storm of expectation and solitude, of power and isolation. The chasm between their worlds, which had once seemed so vast and insurmountable, suddenly felt insignificant, a mere circumstantial detail in the face of the powerful, elemental connection they shared. Their souls, it seemed, spoke the same language, a language of longing, of vulnerability, of unexpected love. He promised himself in that moment that he would protect what they had just found, this fragile, precious thing, no matter how complicated their lives were about to become, no matter the obstacles that lay ahead. He would fight for this, for her, for them. The days that followed the kiss were a dreamlike blur of discovery, a tender, intoxicating dance of burgeoning intimacy. A new, fragile warmth bloomed in the sterile, opulent spaces of Ashford Manor, filling the vast, impersonal rooms with a life and vibrancy they had never known before. The polite distance that had once defined their interactions was gone, replaced by easy touches, lingering glances, and conversations that stretched late into the night, revealing layers of themselves they had meticulously hidden from the world. Sophia discovered the man behind the imposing facade, the enigmatic CEO. She found Dominic possessed a dry, wicked sense of humor that surfaced in unexpected moments, a surprising passion for classic literature that filled the library, and a deep, quiet appreciation for the simple beauty she brought into his meticulously ordered life. He showed her his collection of rare maps, shared insights into ancient civilizations, and for the first time, she saw the true depth of his intellectual curiosity. a mind always seeking knowledge, understanding, far beyond the confines of his business empire. Dominic, in turn, was utterly, irrevocably captivated by Sophia. He found himself rushing home from his mysterious high-pressure job, his mind usually consumed by complex corporate strategies, now eager to hear the soft melody of her humming as she scribbled lyrics in her journal, or the sound of her genuine laughter echoing in the manor. He, a man whose life was scheduled down to the minute, began to cherish the spontaneous, unstructured moments with her. She was teaching him how to live outside the rigid lines he had drawn for himself, how to find joy in the imperfect, the unplanned, the beautifully chaotic moments of human connection. His perfectly ordered world was now beautifully, irrevocably chaotic, infused with a warmth and vibrancy he had never known he was missing. Their passion was a quiet, constant flame, a sensual current running just beneath the surface of their new relationship. While they moved slowly, respecting the unspoken boundaries of their burgeoning intimacy, the sensual tension was always there, a palpable force that charged the air between them. It was in the way his hand would linger on her waist as he passed her, a fleeting, possessive touch that sent shivers down her spine. It was in the way she would bite her lip, her hazel eyes sparkling with unspoken desire when she caught him watching her, a deep, soulful intensity in his gaze. It was in the deep, soul-stirring kisses they shared in the quiet moments of the night, filled with a promise of a deeper intimacy to come, a future they were both hesitantly, hopefully, moving towards. The separate staff quarters and master suite, once symbols of their disparate worlds, now felt like temporary boundaries, ready to dissolve completely. One evening, he came home to find she had transformed his private study. She had filled it with dozens of flickering candles, their soft glow casting dancing shadows across the high ceilings and illuminating the dark leather-bound books. She was playing a soft, romantic melody on the grand piano, a tune that spoke of love found in unexpected places. She had prepared a simple dinner, a rich, fragrant stew, her grandmother's recipe, and they ate on a blanket on the floor amidst the candlelight, the glittering city a breathtaking backdrop to their private, intimate world. It was in these quiet moments that Sophia saw the full extent of his loneliness, the profound solitude that had shaped his existence. He confessed he had never done this before, had never had someone create such a sense of home for him within the sterile walls of his house. His life had been a series of acquisitions, of achievements, of calculated successes, not of experiences, of shared moments, of genuine connection. The disparity in their wealth, which had once been a source of such anxiety for Sophia, began to fade into the background, becoming less significant, less defining. She realized his money was a part of him, an undeniable aspect of his reality, but it did not define him, did not make him who he truly was. What defined him was his fierce integrity, his hidden well of tenderness, his quiet strength, and the profound sense of safety she felt when she was with him. Dominic, in turn, was not in love with a project, a charity case, or a rescued maid. He was in love with her spirit, her untamed talent, her unwavering strength that had carried her through the storm, and the chaotic beauty she brought into his meticulously ordered life. Their love, born from chaos and unexpected kindness, was blossoming, a fragile, exquisite flower in the heart of his gilded cage. Yet, a shadow lingered at the edges of their idyllic bubble, a subtle dissonance in their beautiful symphony. While Dominic had shared the tragic story of Elena's death, revealing his profound guilt, he still maintained a veil of secrecy around the specifics of his professional life and the full weight of his public persona. He spoke vaguely of the office, of cases and long hours, but the details were always elusive, shrouded in a deliberate opacity. Sophia sensed there was more to his sister's story, a layer of darkness he still hadn't revealed, something that fueled his unrelenting drive for control. She was in love with Dominic, the man who had saved her, the man who made her feel cherished and alive, the man who, in his quiet way, was teaching her how to hope again. She was blissfully, ignorantly aware that she was falling for one of the most powerful and influential public figures in the entire city, a titan whose name was synonymous with an empire, a man whose decisions reverberated across global markets. The truth, carefully hidden, was about to surface, threatening to shatter the fragile, beautiful world they had built. The subtle shifts in Dominic's demeanor became more pronounced. A new intensity, almost an urgency, began to color his work. He was often on hushed late-night calls, his voice low and grim, words like hostile takeover, market manipulation, and corporate espionage occasionally filtering through his study door. Sophia, her newfound happiness tinged with a growing unease, couldn't shake the feeling that his carefully contained world was becoming increasingly volatile. She noticed fleeting, suspicious details. A powerful, sleek black car with tinted windows, not his usual limousine, often waited silently outside the manor for him, sometimes late at night, sometimes early in the morning. She overheard fragments of conversations from staff, hushed whispers about Mr. Thorne's old rival and unethical practices. The manor, once a sanctuary of quiet luxury, felt subtly charged with a new undercurrent of tension, a shadow creeping into its gilded halls. One afternoon, while tidying Dominic's study, a room he now left open, a testament to their growing trust, her eyes fell upon a newspaper clipping subtly tucked beneath a pile of financial reports. It was old, yellowed, from a prominent business journal, but the headline screamed a chilling truth. Ashford Holdings rocked by corporate espionage scandal. Twin sister, Elena Ashford, implicated. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled as she pulled the clipping free. The article detailed a major scandal that had nearly brought Dominic's father's company to its knees years ago. It spoke of leaked trade secrets, industrial sabotage, and a rival corporation that had almost succeeded in a hostile takeover. The most devastating part was the accusation. Elena Ashford, Dominic's twin sister, had been implicated, not directly as the perpetrator but as a person of interest, a vulnerable link exploited by the rivals, perhaps due to her artistic, less business-savvy nature and her strained relationship with her family at the time. The article suggested her untimely death had conveniently closed the investigation, leaving many unanswered questions about her true involvement and the rivals' tactics. The darkest secret wasn't just his guilt over Elena's death. It was entwined with a scandal, a betrayal, a profound injustice that had cast a shadow over her memory and his family's legacy. Dominic's confession of guilt, she realized, went far deeper than just refusing to join her. He felt responsible for her vulnerability, for the circumstances that led to her implication, for failing to protect her from the ruthless world he inhabited. His unwavering drive, his need for absolute control, his ruthless efficiency. It was all a defense, a desperate measure to ensure such a catastrophe, such a personal and corporate wound, would never happen again. He was fighting ghosts, not just for his empire, but for Elena's honor, for a justice he believed had been denied. The pain of the revelation was a sharp, physical ache. She understood his silence now, his meticulous compartmentalization. How could he possibly share such a dark, complicated, and deeply personal wound with anyone, especially with a maid whose world was so far removed? But the understanding was mingled with a bitter pang of hurt. He still hadn't trusted her enough to tell her the whole truth. Their love, fragile and new, was built on a foundation of shared vulnerabilities, but also on a silence that now felt like a gaping chasm. Just then, she heard the distinct sound of Dominic's limousine pulling up to the manor. Panic seized her. She quickly folded the clipping, stuffing it back into its hidden place, her heart hammering against her ribs. She smoothed her maid's uniform, trying to compose herself, to erase any trace of the profound shock that had just rattled her world. He walked in, his expression tired from a long day, but it softened into a warm, genuine smile when he saw her. "Sophia," he said, his voice filled with an affection that now felt like a cruel irony. He moved to kiss her, a familiar, tender gesture, but a subtle stiffness in her posture, an almost imperceptible withdrawal made him pause. His smile vanished, replaced by a look of deep concern, his dark eyes searching hers. "What is it?" he asked, his voice losing its usual calm. She couldn't speak. She could only look at him, at the man she loved, whose pain she now understood, but who was also, in this shattering moment, a stranger burdened by a secret too profound, too dark, to share. The trust that had been the bedrock of their fragile relationship, the invisible thread that bound them, had been stretched to its breaking point. The silence between them, once intimate, now felt filled with an insurmountable truth, a truth that had just ripped them apart. She had to confront him. She had to know why he had hidden this, even if the answer would break her heart completely, irrevocably. Taking a deep, shaky breath that felt like pulling air through broken glass, Sophia turned to face him fully, her hands clasped tightly together, trembling slightly. The concealed newspaper clipping in his desk drawer felt like a silent, damning accuser. "Dominic," she began, her voice quiet but steady, betraying none of the furious turmoil raging inside her. "There's something I need to ask you about Elena." His posture stiffened imperceptibly at first, then visibly. His dark eyes, which had softened with affection moments before, became guarded, a steel barrier descending over them. "What about Elena?" he asked, his voice even, controlled but with an underlying tension she could now detect. "It's not just that she died, Dominic," Sophia continued, pushing past her fear, needing the truth. "It's how her name was implicated in the scandal, the corporate espionage." His formidable composure finally cracked. A flicker of profound regret, mixed with something that looked suspiciously like raw fear, crossed his face, stripping away his usual impassive mask. He looked like a man who had just been struck a mortal blow. "You knew, didn't you? You knew about the scandal, about what they said about her. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide it?" "Sophia, let me explain," he began, taking a tentative step toward her, his hands outstretched. She held up a hand, stopping him, a barrier of hurt and betrayal. "Explain what?" she asked, the pain finally bleeding into her voice, raw and unvarnished. "Explain why you lied to me? Why you omitted the single most important, most devastating fact about your family? Did you think I was too simple to understand the complexities of your world? Or were you just ashamed of her past? Ashamed of my past? By association? Was I just a pleasant diversion? A temporary escape from the dark reality you live in?" The questions tumbled out, each one laced with the searing pain of her insecurity and the corrosive bite of his deception. "No, of course not," he roared, his voice thick with an emotion she had never heard from him before, a desperate plea for understanding that bordered on anguish. "It was never about that. It was the opposite. My entire life, people have seen the name Ashford, the money, the power. They've seen the scandals, the accusations. They don't see the man, Dominic, or the woman, Elena. They approach me with an agenda, with expectations, with judgment, with fear. They tainted Elena's memory with their cruel whispers, their baseless insinuations. I am not a person to them. I am an institution, a shield against a world that tried to destroy my sister." He ran a hand through his hair, his powerful frame shaking. When Elena died, her reputation was already in tatters because of that monstrous lie. My father, he sacrificed everything to bury the truth, to protect her name from further mudslinging, even if it meant burying part of himself. I swore then that I would rebuild, I would control, I would protect. Protect her memory, protect my family, protect myself from ever feeling that helpless again. He moved closer, his dark eyes, red-rimmed and raw, pleading with her. "When I met you, Sophia, you were just you. You needed help. You looked at me like I was just a man, not a billionaire, not a CEO, not a man haunted by a scandal, just a man. And when I heard your voice, it was the first time I felt peace, true peace, since Elena was gone. I was so utterly captivated by your spirit, by your fierce independence, by your complete lack of pretense, that I was terrified to shatter that precious illusion by revealing the crushing weight of my public identity, of her tainted legacy. I was afraid you would see me as part of that darkness, that you would judge me, judge her, like everyone else. I wanted you to see me," he pleaded, his voice cracking with vulnerability, his carefully constructed facade utterly crumbling. "Dominic, just Dominic, the man who loves the sound of your voice and the way you bring light into this silent house. I've never had that before. I was a coward, Sophia. I was afraid that the moment you knew, you would start to look at me differently, that you would leave." His confession, so raw and honest, chipped away at the icy wall of her anger, melting some of the bitterness, but the hurt, the profound sting of his deception, remained. "So, you chose to deceive me instead?" she countered, her voice trembling, refusing to let him off the hook entirely. "You built this beautiful thing between us on a foundation of lies. You let me fall in love with a man who didn't fully trust me. How can I trust anything now? How do I know that this isn't just another part of your carefully controlled, compartmentalized life? The part where you get to play at being a normal man with a normal girl? before you go back to your real world, your real life, where you fight silent battles for a sister whose memory is shrouded in scandal. The argument was raw, painful, and stripped them both bare, exposing their deepest fears and insecurities. She hurled her fears of inadequacy, her feelings of being used at him, and he countered with the crushing weight of his lifelong loneliness, the burden of a life lived in a gilded cage of his own making, fighting a war no one knew about. They were two people from opposite ends of the universe who had found a common ground, only to have the harsh realities of their worlds and his secrets tear it apart. The love between them was undeniable, a powerful magnetic force in the room, palpable and almost agonizing, but the breach of trust felt like a fatal wound, too deep to heal in a single conversation. Finally, exhausted and heartbroken, tears stinging her eyes, Sophia knew what she had to do. "I can't be here, Dominic," she whispered, tears finally streaming freely down her face, each drop a testament to her shattered dream. "I can't be your secret, and I can't live in a world where I don't even know who the man I'm sleeping with really is. I can't live with this unspoken lie about Elena, about you." The words hung in the air, a devastating final blow, ripping through the last vestiges of their connection. She turned and walked toward her staff quarters, the small room that had been her sanctuary, now feeling like a temporary prison, to pack the few things that were actually hers. He didn't try to stop her immediately, but stood frozen, a statue of despair, the picture of a man who had just lost the only real thing in his entire gilded life. Packing was a swift, brutal affair, each item she touched a poignant reminder of what had been and what was now lost. The subtle improvements to her room, the ease of her grandmother's medical bills, gifts from his hidden hand, now felt tainted, part of the deception. She left everything that felt like his behind, taking only her worn clothes, her new journal filled with nascent melodies of hope, and her cherished guitar, its familiar weight a comfort. Each item was a painful reminder of the dream she had been living, a beautiful, terrifying dream that had just shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Her guitar, her oldest companion, was the last item she retrieved, its weight a familiar comfort, a promise of expression even in her deepest pain. When she emerged from her room with her small bag and guitar case, Dominic was still standing in the study doorway, a statue of desolation, his face a mask of pale, hollow despair, his eyes fixed on the empty space where she had just been. He looked at the small bag in her hand, at the battered guitar case, and the stark reality of what was happening seemed to finally hit him with its full, devastating force. "Where will you go?" he asked, his voice raw, broken, laced with a deep personal agony that finally pierced through her own pain. It was a practical question from a man who always thought in terms of solutions, but it was imbued with a profound, almost primal, fear of loss. "I'll figure it out," she replied, her voice cold, though it was taking every ounce of her remaining strength not to break down, not to dissolve into sobs. "I always have." Her voice was a fragile shield, protecting her from his pain, from her own. She walked toward the staff exit, the unassuming door that led to the outside world, a gateway to freedom that now felt like an escape from a beautiful, suffocating prison. "Sophia, don't do this," he pleaded, finally moving, crossing the vast room in a few long, desperate strides to stand before her, blocking her path to the door. His hands reached for her, but she instinctively flinched away. "We can fix this. I'll do anything. I'll tell the world about Elena, about the scandal, about the truth. I don't care about the scrutiny anymore. Just please, please don't leave me. My house, it's just an empty shell without you." The desperation in his voice was a knife in her heart, twisting with a terrible, bittersweet pain. This powerful, controlled man, the formidable CEO, was begging, stripped of all his pride and authority, reduced to a raw, vulnerable human being. But the wound was too deep, the deception too profound, the foundation of their love too thoroughly shattered. She needed space. She needed to breathe air that wasn't perfumed with his immense wealth and his carefully guarded secrets, air that wasn't heavy with the ghost of Elena's past. "The problem isn't the world, Dominic," she said, her voice breaking, the tears now free to fall. "It's us. It's that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. Love can't be built on that, not on a lie that touches such deep pain." With a final heartbreaking look into his devastated, pleading eyes, eyes that now held a profound mirror image of her own pain. She stepped around him and opened the staff door. She walked out into the vast, indifferent night, back into the world where she was once again, utterly on her own, her heart in a million pieces, her guitar clutched tight. For the next few agonizing days, Dominic Ashford was a ghost in his own life, a hollow echo in the vast, empty spaces of Ashford Manor. The opulent mansion, once filled with the resonant sound of her music and the vibrant echo of her laughter, was now a silent, echoing mausoleum, a luxurious tomb for his shattered hopes. Every room held a memory of her, a poignant phantom. He saw her at the piano, her eyes closed in concentration, her soul laid bare in melody. He smelled the phantom scent of garlic and basil in the pristine kitchen, the lingering aroma of the home she had created. He saw her reflection in the vast windows overlooking the city, a fleeting image of vibrant life against his monochromatic existence. Her absence was a physical presence, a gaping wound in the heart of his perfect, empty life. He had built a fortress to keep the world out, to protect himself from vulnerability, from the pain of judgment, from the shadow of Elena's scandal. And in doing so, he had, with his own hands, pushed out the only person who had ever made that fortress feel like a home, the only person who had truly seen him. His days at Ashford Holdings became a blur of numb, functional misery. He went through the motions of his high-powered life, attended meetings, made decisions, signed documents, but his focus was shattered, his razor-sharp intellect clouded by the constant, aching memory of Sophia. His judgment, usually infallible, was now clouded by regret and a profound sense of loss. He had respected her need for space, had tried to give her time, but his restraint was eroding with every passing, silent hour, each tick of the clock a torment. He slept little, haunted by her tear-streaked face, by the finality in her voice, by the devastating truth of her words. Love can't be built on that. The newspaper clipping, the source of his profound guilt, now lay openly on his desk, no longer needing to be hidden, for the truth had cost him everything. He finally admitted the brutal truth to himself, a confession wrung from the depths of his despair. His fear of her leaving hadn't truly been about his title, about the public scrutiny, about the disruption to his meticulously ordered life. It had been about something far deeper, far more insidious. His own profound unworthiness, his inability to trust after Elena's betrayal and his family's pain. He had never truly felt that a woman, especially one as vibrant and authentic as Sophia, could love him. The man, separate from his name and his immense fortune, separate from the power he wielded, separate from the dark shadow of his past. His deception hadn't been a betrayal of her trust alone, but a profound betrayal of himself, a capitulation to his deepest, most primal insecurities, to the lingering trauma of Elena's scandal. And in trying to protect himself from a perceived rejection, from the pain of being loved for the wrong reasons, he had with devastating precision created the very reality he feared. He had lost her, and the realization was a crushing blow, an agony far greater than any business failure, any public scandal. He couldn't let that be the end of their story. He would not. Sophia, meanwhile, found a fragile refuge in a small, cramped apartment above a downtown cafe, secured with the last of her dwindling savings. Her old friend, a fellow musician named Leo, offered what little comfort he could, sharing stories and cheap coffee. The cramped space, so utterly different from the sprawling manor, felt ironically comforting in its familiarity, its chaotic, artistic energy. She threw herself into her music, channeling all of her heartbreak, her disillusionment, her raw, aching pain into her songs. Her old guitar, her constant companion, became her only confidant, each strum a release, each lyric a catharsis. Her performances at small, smoky jazz clubs, far from the grand stages she once dreamt of, took on a new, raw intensity, a profound, almost spiritual depth. She sang of love, of loss, of betrayal, of the agonizing beauty of being human with such authentic, gut-wrenching emotion that the audiences were left breathless and, often, teary-eyed. She wasn't just performing, she was channeling her pain into her art, the only way she knew how to survive, to transcend, to heal. Her voice, once her greatest secret, was now her loudest confession. But every night when the music stopped, when the applause faded, and she was alone with her thoughts in the quiet intimacy of her small room, The ache of Dominic's absence was a constant, throbbing pain, a relentless counterpoint to her melodies. She missed the man, not the CEO, not the billionaire, not the formidable titan of industry. She missed the way he listened to her, his intense gaze absorbing every nuance of her soul. She missed the quiet safety of his presence, the profound stillness he brought to her chaotic world. She missed the surprising tenderness in his touch, the unexpected vulnerability in his eyes when he spoke of Elena. She had run from his world, from his secrets, from the immense chasm between them, but she couldn't outrun the truth of her own heart. She was still completely, hopelessly, irrevocably in love with him. She had chosen her pride over her love, her perceived self-respect over the profound connection they shared, and the searing loneliness of that choice was a bitter, unbearable pill to swallow. She had lost her home, her dreams, and now, the man who had brought her back to life, all because of a secret she hadn't known how to bear. The breaking point for Dominic came on a rainy Tuesday night, a week after Sophia had left. It was a soft, steady drizzle that mirrored the profound melancholy in his soul, a quiet weeping that felt in sync with his own internal torment. He was sitting alone in the dark expanse of his living room, staring at the grand piano, a silent, beautiful monument to the music and life that had vanished from his home. He had spent the past week in a state of numb, functional misery, going through the motions of his high-powered life, but his focus was shattered, his razor-sharp intellect clouded by the constant, aching memory of Sophia. Every corner of the penthouse whispered her name, echoed her laughter, recalled her melodies. He had tried to respect her need for space, his ingrained discipline battling his overwhelming desire to go to her, to beg, to explain. But his restraint was eroding with every passing silent hour, each tick of the opulent grandfather clock, a reminder of the time slipping away, of the chasm growing wider between them. He finally admitted the ultimate truth to himself, a raw, unflinching confession born from the depths of his despair. His fear of her leaving hadn't truly been about his title, about the public scrutiny, about the disruption to his meticulously ordered life. It had been about something far deeper, far more insidious, his own profound unworthiness, his inability to trust fully after the trauma of Elena's scandal. He had never truly felt that a woman, especially one as vibrant and authentic as Sophia, could love him, the man, separate from his name and his immense fortune, separate from the power he wielded, separate from the dark shadow of his past. His deception hadn't been a betrayal of her trust alone, but a profound betrayal of himself, a capitulation to his deepest, most primal insecurities. And in trying to protect himself from a perceived rejection, from the pain of being loved for the wrong reasons, he had, with devastating precision, created the very reality he feared. He had lost her, and the realization was a crushing blow, an agony far greater than any business failure, any public scandal. He couldn't let that be the end of their story. He would not. He grabbed his car keys and his jacket, a man on a mission, driven by a clarity he hadn't felt in days, a singular, undeniable purpose. He knew where she would be. He drove, not to her grandmother's apartment, not to Leo's place, but directly to the Blue Note, a small, unassuming jazz club he had heard Leo mention, a place so utterly outside his carefully constructed world. He walked in, his presence immediately drawing stares, whispers rippling through the hushed club. Dominic Ashford, the CEO? What is he doing here? He ignored them all, his gaze sweeping the room with a laser-like focus until he found her, a solitary, luminous figure in the golden spotlight on stage. She was singing a new song, a heartbreakingly beautiful melody, raw with an authentic sorrow so profound it silenced the entire room, gripping every patron in its emotional embrace. He listened to the words, to the aching vulnerability woven into each note, and his heart broke all over again, recognizing his own story and her pain. She was singing about him, about a man who was a quiet port in a storm, a man who lived in a glass tower, a man who held her heart and then, through his own fear and secrets, let it fall. It was her side of the story, her pain laid bare for all to see, a public confession of her love and her loss. He waited, his powerful frame utterly still, until the last sorrowful note faded into a stunned silence, followed by a wave of explosive, appreciative applause. As she took a graceful bow, her hazel eyes misty with unshed tears, Her gaze swept the room, and she saw him. He was standing at the back of the room, soaked from the persistent rain, his intense gaze locked on hers, a silent plea in their depths. She finished her set in a daze, her mind reeling, her heart thrumming with a mixture of shock, hope, and lingering pain. When she came off stage, he was there, waiting for her in the wings, his presence a formidable, yet comforting, anchor. "Sophia," he said, his voice thick with raw emotion, a plea, a prayer, a confession all rolled into one. Before she could protest or run, before she could erect her emotional walls, he laid his soul bare, a vulnerability she had only glimpsed before. "You were right, I was a coward. I hid behind my title, behind my name, behind my wealth, because I was terrified that the man underneath it all wasn't enough. I was afraid that if you saw the real me with all my past burdens, without the trappings of power, you wouldn't stay. That you would see Elena's shadow, her tainted name, and run. But these last few days without you, Sophia, they have been the emptiest of my entire life. My world, my power, my name, Ashford Holdings. It's all just a silent, echoing, empty room without you in it. You are the warmth, the light, the music, the very heart of it all. I don't want to be a CEO without you. I don't want to be anything without you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out not an extravagant ring, not a contract, but a single, simple, gleaming key. "This isn't a key to Ashford Manor, Sophia," he said, his voice trembling with a raw, profound vulnerability as he pressed it into her hand, her fingers closing around its cool metal. "It's the key to my home. It's nothing without you there to make it one. And about Elena's story, I should have told you. The truth is complicated, but I'll tell you everything. I'll face the world with it. With you. I love you, Sophia. Not as a secret. Not as an escape. I love you. All of you. Your strength, your talent, your chaotic beauty, your fierce heart. And I want to build a real life with you, no matter how messy or public or complicated it gets. Please, Sophia. Please come home. Come make my house a home. Come help me honor Elena's memory, truly." The rain was falling outside again, a soft, steady rhythm, just as it had on the night they met. But this time it wasn't a storm of loss or despair. It was a promise of renewal, a gentle benediction, washing away the pain of the past, cleansing the way for a new beginning. She looked from the simple key in her hand to the desperate, hopeful, loving face of the man before her. Not the CEO, not the formidable billionaire, but Dominic. Her Dominic. And in that moment, a profound, undeniable truth settled in her heart. Home wasn't a place, wasn't a manor, wasn't a concept of luxury or status, or even a past without shadows. Home was him. It was always him in all his complicated truth. She threw her arms around his neck, her tears now tears of joy and profound relief, and met his lips in a soul-deep kiss, a kiss of forgiveness, of reunion, and of a love that was stronger than any secret, more powerful than any lie, more resilient than any storm. It was a kiss that sealed their future, a promise whispered in the quiet intimacy of their embrace. If this story touched your heart and resonated with the power of true love and forgiveness, don't leave without subscribing to our channel. Your unwavering support means everything to us, allowing us to continue bringing you these captivating tales of luxury romance. Hit the bell icon so you never miss the next incredible journey. And tell us in the comments below, from which country are you watching tonight? We can't wait to connect with our global family.